fall of 1982, someone walked into ordinary stores in the suburbs of Chicago, picked up bottles of America's most trusted pain reliever off the shelf, quietly opened them, replaced some of the capsules inside with pills packed full of enough cyanide to kill a grown adult in minutes, sealed the bottles back up so perfectly that nobody working in those stores ever noticed a thing, and placed them back on the shelf exactly where they'd been. Then they walked out. No one saw them do it. No camera caught a face. There was no note left behind, no warning, nothing. And over the course of about 48 hours, 7 completely unconnected people in ordinary homes bought those bottles, took the medicine exactly the way the label told them to, and died before anyone understood why. By the time investigators figured out what was actually happening, it was already too late to save a single one of them. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't personal. As far as anyone has ever been able to determine, the victims weren't targeted individually at all. Whoever did this simply wanted people to die and didn't especially care who. More than 40 years later, that person has never been identified, never been charged, and for all anyone knows, could still be alive today. This case terrified an entire country for weeks, permanently changed the way every bottle of medicine on the planet is designed and sealed, and came, at one point, agonizingly close to an arrest that never quite happened. There were confessions. There were suspects investigators privately believed in their own internal reports were guilty. And still, to this day, nobody has ever been charged with a single one of these deaths. Stay with me, because the amount of certainty investigators had and still couldn't turn into a conviction is one of the most frustrating things I've ever covered on this channel. It started on the morning of September 29, 1982, in the quiet suburb of Elk Grove Village, Illinois. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up with a sore throat and a runny nose, the kind of ordinary childhood cold that happens 1,000 times a day in every corner of the country. Her parents gave her 1 extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Within minutes, she locked herself in the bathroom and collapsed on the floor. Her father heard the fall and forced the door open, finding his daughter unconscious on the tile. Paramedics arrived within minutes of the call, and by the time they reached the house, Mary was already unresponsive, her breathing shallow and failing. She was rushed to the hospital, but nothing the doctors tried made any difference. By 7 that morning, she was gone. Doctors initially had no explanation. Healthy 12-year-olds do not simply die from a cold, and for a few hours, her death was recorded as a tragic, unexplained mystery, filed away with no obvious cause. That same morning, 7 miles away in Arlington Heights, a 27-year-old postal worker named Adam Janis came home from work, complained of chest pain, took a Tylenol capsule from a bottle in his kitchen, and collapsed shortly after. He was rushed to the hospital, and doctors initially suspected a massive heart attack. He was pronounced dead within hours. His family gathered at his house that same afternoon, devastated, trying to process the sudden loss. Adam's brother, Stanley, and Stanley's wife, Teresa, sat together in the kitchen of the home where Adam had just died, both nursing headaches from the stress and grief of the day. Without knowing anything about what had actually killed Adam only hours earlier, they each reached for the same bottle of Tylenol sitting on the counter and took a capsule. Within the hour, both of them had collapsed. Stanley and Teresa Janis were rushed to the same hospital where Adam had just been pronounced dead, and doctors there were now looking at 3 members of the same family, arriving within hours of each other, all with the same sudden, inexplicable collapse. Teresa would be taken off life support and die the following day. 3 people from one family, gone. because two of them had reached for the exact same bottle sitting in their own kitchen, trying to ease a headache brought on by grief for the first person that bottle had already killed. It was this cluster, 3 deaths from one household in a matter of hours, that finally made doctors and paramedics stop and ask an impossible question. What if this wasn't natural at all? A public health nurse named Helen Jensen was sent to the Janus home to investigate. In the bathroom, she found a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol with a receipt showing it had been purchased that very same day, and noticed something specific. 6 capsules were missing from the bottle, more than could be explained by what the family had actually taken. She turned the bottle over to investigators with a simple, urgent suspicion. Whatever had killed this family, it had something to do with that bottle. Lab tests confirmed it within hours. The Tylenol capsules had been laced with potassium cyanide, a poison so fast-acting and so lethal that even a fraction of the amount found in each capsule was enough to kill an adult in minutes. And it wasn't just the Janus family's bottle. As investigators raced to trace the source, they discovered something that turned this from a tragedy into a nationwide emergency. The tainted bottles had come from multiple different manufacturing lots, produced at different factories, sold at completely different stores across the Chicago suburbs. That single detail told investigators something chilling. This hadn't happened during manufacturing. Someone, somewhere in the Chicago area, had been buying bottles of Tylenol off store shelves, opening them, filling capsules with cyanide, resealing the bottles, and returning them to the shelf to be bought by whoever came next. Within days, a multi-agency task force had been assembled, pulling in local police, state investigators, and federal agents, all working out of a single command center that would soon be flooded with calls from a terrified public. At the height of the panic, that command center was logging somewhere between 300 and 400 tips a day. Ordinary people calling in about a suspicious neighbor, a coworker who seemed to know too much, a stranger they'd noticed lingering too long near a pharmacy shelf. Almost none of it led anywhere. But investigators couldn't afford to ignore any of it either, because somewhere in that flood of paranoid, well-meaning phone calls, the actual killer might have been mentioned by name, and there was no way to know which call that was. Over those same 48 hours, 3 more people died the exact same way. Mary McFarland in Elmhurst. Paula Prince, a flight attendant found by her own sister in her Chicago apartment, a bottle of Tylenol sitting in her bathroom with 1 capsule missing. Mary Reiner, a young mother in Winfield. 7 deaths total. 7 people who had done nothing more dangerous than trust the label on a bottle of medicine. Johnson & Johnson, the maker of Tylenol, pulled an estimated 31 million bottles from shelves nationwide, a recall worth over $100 million at the time, and warned hospitals and pharmacies across the country within days. It remains, even now, one of the most studied corporate crisis responses in history, precisely because of how fast and how transparent it was. But speed didn't change one basic fact investigators had to face. Whoever had done this was still out there, and there was absolutely nothing stopping them from doing it again, to a different brand in a different city, at any point they chose. And within weeks, copycats did exactly that. Reports of tampered medication, some real, some hoaxes, began appearing across the country, including a case in California involving strychnine. The entire nation, briefly, became afraid of its own medicine cabinet. Pharmacies pulled entire shelves of unrelated over-the-counter products just to be safe. Parents across the country reportedly searched their bathroom cabinets and threw out anything that had already been opened. News broadcasts ran nightly updates on a case that, only a week earlier, had been a handful of unexplained deaths in a few Chicago suburbs, and was now a genuine national emergency, discussed on every major network and in front pages from coast to coast. As all of this played out, investigators were also chasing something else, a lead that seemed, for a moment, like it might actually crack the case wide open. In early October, Johnson & Johnson received a letter, typed demanding $1 million to, in the letter's own words, stop the killing. The writer described, with specific and disturbing detail, exactly how easy it would be to lace capsules with cyanide. The letter led investigators to a man named James Lewis, living under a false name in New York with his wife Leanne. Lewis had a documented, troubled history that had nothing to do with Tylenol at all, including prior accusations of fraud. And investigators quickly discovered he had a personal grievance against the very company his letter threatened, tied to his wife's past employment there. A nationwide manhunt followed, his photograph appearing on television broadcasts and in newspapers across the country. Lewis evaded capture for roughly 2 months, moving between cities under assumed identities, until, in December of 1982, a librarian recognized him sitting quietly reading in a New York public library and called authorities. FBI agents arrested him on the spot. His wife turned herself in separately the following day, on an unrelated charge of using a false Social Security number, though investigators were never able to establish that she knew anything about her husband's activities at all. Under questioning, Lewis gave investigators an unnervingly detailed account of exactly how the killer could have carried out the poisonings, methodical enough that agents believed, at the very least, he understood the crime at a disturbing level of depth. But he denied being the killer himself, insisting the extortion letter had only been an attempt, in his words, to draw attention to a dispute involving his wife's former employer. Investigators could never place him in Chicago at the time of the murders, and could never establish how he would have traveled there and back without leaving any trace at all. He was convicted of extortion and sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was never charged with the murders themselves. Decades later, in 2007, investigators discovered something that quietly undermined Lewis's own timeline. The postmark on his letter dated back to before the murders had even been publicly reported, which meant if his own account of writing it over 3 days was accurate, he would have started composing a letter about killings that, according to him, he didn't yet know had happened. When confronted with this, Lewis changed his story. Internal Department of Justice documents, released years afterward, would state plainly that investigators believed Lewis was responsible for the poisonings, but that they simply never had enough evidence to charge him with murder. He always denied it, until his death in 2023, and no charge was ever filed. Lewis wasn't the only name that came up. A Chicago man named Roger Arnold also drew serious suspicion from investigators during the original case, after acquaintances described him as unstable and reportedly fixated on poisons. Investigators questioned him extensively. Nothing about the Tylenol murders was ever formally pinned on him either. But Arnold's story took its own dark, unrelated turn a year later, when, apparently consumed by paranoia, that a local bartender had been mocking him around the neighborhood as a suspect in the murders, he armed himself, went looking for the man he blamed, and instead shot and killed a completely unrelated stranger, John Stanisha, in a case of mistaken identity on a Chicago sidewalk. Arnold was convicted of that killing and spent 30 years in prison for it. Some investigators who worked the original case would later say, almost in passing, that they came to think of Stanisha as the case's 8th victim, a man who died because of suspicion tied to a crime he had absolutely nothing to do with. The case never fully closed. On the 25th anniversary of the murders, renewed public attention led investigators back through the original evidence. In 2009, they searched Lewis's home again and obtained a sample of his DNA for testing. It matched nothing. In 2023, more than 40 years after the murders, investigators ordered yet another round of DNA testing on key physical evidence still held from the original case, hoping modern forensic techniques might finally succeed where 1980s technology couldn't. As of right now, no result from that testing has led to a single new charge. So here is where the case actually stands. 7 people are dead. A convicted extortionist who investigators privately believe committed the murders has never been charged with them, and died still denying it. A second suspect went on to kill an innocent man in an entirely separate act of violence tied to the paranoia this case created. And somewhere in among all of that, whoever actually walked into those stores, opened those bottles, and put them back on the shelf has simply never been found. What this case did leave behind, undeniably, is a permanent mark on how the entire world buys medicine. Before 1982, medicine bottles simply didn't have tamper-proof seals, foil liners, or the layers of plastic wrapping we now consider completely normal. All of that exists because of what happened in those few days in the Chicago suburbs. In 1983, Congress passed federal legislation making product tampering a specific federal crime. In 1989, the FDA established formal tamper-resistant packaging requirements that apply to virtually every over-the-counter medication sold in the country today. Every single time you fight with a stubborn safety seal on a bottle of pills, you are, whether you realize it or not, dealing with the direct legacy of 7 people who simply trusted a label and never got the chance to know why that trust nearly killed a nation's sense of safety. Think about that for a second. Someone somewhere walked anonymously through ordinary stores in an ordinary Chicago autumn and changed how billions of people around the world would interact with medicine forever, and to this day, we don't know their name, their face, or their reason. They may have died decades ago. They may still be alive right now, quietly aware of exactly what they did and exactly how close investigators came without ever closing the distance. If this case unsettled you the way it unsettled me, let me know in the comments who you think was actually responsible. James Lewis, Roger Arnold, someone whose name has never once come up. And if you want more real unsolved mysteries told exactly like this one, subscribe to Crime Through Time, because cases like this are exactly why this channel exists.